So getting back to Redis Paintman, the versions that they're using right now, uh, Redis Studio Paintman, which is one of the earlier versions, are being most used. After that is Paintman 5 and Paintman HD. So Redis Studio Paintman, um, they're using it for raster tracing, for gradation, and for vector drawing. The file type that they're using for outputting each cell is a Targa, which is a TGA. It's a file most compatible with Photoshop, After Effects, etc. PSD files, which is the Flash files, are not compatible with Redis, so they don't use those files. Files that are being used in order in Anime for cells or for layouts or backgrounds are TGAs, which are Targas, Photoshop PSD files, which are being used, but they're not being used for probably animation cells and layout. Pict, Flash, Animo, JPEG, and last are PNGs. And PNGs and JPEGs are hardly even used, as well as Animo files. So now we're going to talk about retouching software. The question was what retouching software are being used and also being used for viewing images, not just retouching. So the first answer, well, the majority of the software that are being used for touch-ups is Photoshop, then Redis Paintman, Iron Fan View, which I don't know what that is, Photoshop Elements, VIX, Flash, Clip Studio Pro, Animo Ink and Paint, XNView, something called Sigma GCNW, and last is Sai, which is another Japanese software, kind of like a Photoshop, I guess knockoff. I don't know how to describe Sai, but you can look at that online. As far as 3D CG, I'll call it 3D CG, not call it CGI or stereoscopic 3D, because we're basically just talking about CG in general, so I'll just call it 3D CG. Older versions of software are being used also with CG. They're used for to achieve compatibility with other partner companies, 2 or 3 versions from the latest. So the majority of the software that's being used for 3D CGI is 3D Max. After that is Maya, then Soft Image, Lightwave, Modo, Blender, Shade, and other. Uh, 3D CG question was apps to supplement the main software features, meaning plugins or other other software that the main software that you're using to create the CG can't do so well, like rendering or modeling. So RealFlow is being used for fluid simulation, like water. V-Ray is being used, I guess, for rendering. I'm not too sure what V-Ray is for. ZBrush is being used for modeling and painting. Mental Ray is being used for rendering. Motion Builder is being used for easier animation and for motion capture. So the software that's being used most in order from 1 to 12 is RealFlow, V-Ray, ZBrush, Mental Ray, Motion Builder, FX Hair, Mudbox, City Engine, RenderMan, 3D Delight, Google SketchUp, and Polytrans, and Xfog. That's actually 13. Another question about 3D CG was about plugins. I'm not too familiar with 3D CG. I don't do CG much. So the number one answer for plugins was Pencil Plus. And then after that was 3D Max only plugins. I guess just plugins for 3D Max. Then plugins for Maya, plugins for Lightwave, soft image plugins, Illustrate, other, like in-house created plugins, and last was Final Tune. It was stated by animation companies in Japan that motion capture isn't usually used in 3D anime. Well, it isn't used in anime unless it's 3D CGI. The computer specs for 3D that they're using right now, or just in general for animation, is 4 core. After that is 6 core. After that is 8 core. The gigabytes for the computers are, majority is 16 gigs. After that is 32 gigs. And after that is 8 gigs. And the most used operating system is Windows 7 64 bits, followed by Windows XP, Mac 10.6, and Mac 10.8. So the reason for CGI that are being used right now, or 3D CG in anime, is the majority of it is being used for partial animation. I guess like background moving or animating cars. And then after that, 3D CG is being used for full production, full length, meaning a whole entire movie, like Astro Boy, for instance, was a full 3D CG movie. Other reasons for using CG in anime is character animation. If you ever watch Tribe Called Crew, they have 2D animated characters, but when they start dancing, they're 3D CG. I guess that's an example for you. Other uses for 3D CG is CG unique effects like clouds or explosions or running water or other destruction. Backgrounds like forests and skyscrapers or large crowd scenes in animation. They're done in 3D CG, not necessarily with 3D models, but you can do a 2.5 parallax animation. Other uses for 3D CG in anime are monitor displays or meter representations. Like, let's say someone's typing on a computer, you're going to have a computer generated image, not necessarily a hand-drawn image. Mecha action, I guess they're using 3D CG to do mechas instead of animating them like they used to in Gundam or stuff like that. And background video with camera mapping, meaning I guess when a character is running, or I don't know what a good example is. A background video with camera mapping means. It was translated from a Japanese document, so that's why I was a little I didn't understand that translation too well. Another question was cell shade correction is not made for cell shade rendering is not made for the fact of render. I guess they're not using 3D CG cell shading in anime. It just doesn't look right, and they're not correcting the cells after they create the 3D CG, so they're not fixing them. Basically, they're not like painting over them in Photoshop to correct them. I guess the ethic of do it once, do it right is being used when they're using CG to make characters, and just basic know-how. Like, they expect you to know how to do it well and not mess it up, so they don't have to clean up your mistakes when you're using CG. Other software that are being used, software for compiling, mainly After Effects. After that is Redis, Core Redis, being used by a few companies for compositing. Animal Director and Nuke are barely used. For still image processing, Photoshop is mainly used, and Illustrator is being used for, I guess, for some jobs. The majority of 3D CG animation applications are as followed. 3ds Max, which is mainly used. Maya is being used by a few companies, and Lightwave is hardly used. And for editing, for other apps that are being used, Final Cut Pro, HD, and Flash. The After Effects versions that are being most used right now are CS6, CS5/5.5, CS4, CC, CS3, 7.0, and 6X. So the most After Effects that are being used right now are CS6. And for Photoshop versions used most, it's CS6, CS5/5.5, CS4, CC/CS2. I guess they're being used the amount the same of CC and CS2. After that is CS3 and then CS, which is kind of weird. For smoother plugins and Cell Smoother, basically it's like an anti-aliasing of your cells. The software that's being used is OLM Smoother, PS Soft Anti-Aliasing, Core Redis, which has a built-in smoother, Lealu Smooth, and then there's self-developed smoothers. I guess like in-house companies. I guess each proprietary software. I'm sorry, I can't say the word very well. Gonzo Smoothing and KW Effects. I guess those are other software. I'm not too familiar with any of these really, besides Core Redis and OLM Smoother and PS Soft. I don't really know the other smoothers. When it comes to transferring information digitally, most companies are using hard drives like USBs or just hard drives like portable hard drives, and FTPs over LAN. If you know much about the internet, a LAN meaning an in-house network, and they're also using FTPs to transfer information between companies. So they have a cloud service or a server somewhere. Delivery VCRs, meaning like old school analog tapes. The most used are HD Cam 60i for movies and televisions, and HD Cam 24p for television, etc. Like, I guess, the web. Data is delivered on QuickTime for movies, TV, web, etc. Like, QuickTime codec is the most used. The best codec that's being used is QuickTime Animation, and then after that is QuickTime Animation Normal. So it's QuickTime Animation Best for movie and TVs, and QuickTime Animation Normal for, I guess, like the web or DVDs or something like that. I'm not too sure. The frame rates that are being used are 30 frames per second, which is 60i, followed by 24p. Offline editing is done mainly in Avid and Composer, well, Avid Media Composer and Premiere Pro for PCs and Final Cut for Mac. If they are delivering tapes for air, actually not for air, for sending to the compositors, they're using digital beta, and then after that is Betacam SP, and the third is HDCam 24p. And they're also still using VHS, I guess, just for offline editing purposes, just for, you know, fast editing. The most used codec for editing, for sending files, is QuickTime H.264. Then it's QuickTime DV. After that is QuickTime Best. And then after that is Avid. They're cutting in 30 frames per second, which is a 60i, and then 24 frames per second, which is 24p. And for airing animation on TV, they're using QuickTime Animation 30 frames per second 60i codec. They're using an 8-bit depth for theatrical releases, and after that it's 10 bits. After that it's 16 bits. So that's the file sizes and storage and the bit depth that they're using for theater and television. And that's it. That's all I got. I hope this made some sense. I'll try to show some graphs if I haven't already within this video, but other than that, that's it. That's all the specs that I have right now for you. So, thanks for watching.